Craig is an amazing person. He is a scholar whose research brings a rich theological framework to the study of popular culture, especially social media technology. But Craig also worked as a missionary and a Hollywood screenwriter, and he's kind of the guru of all things faith and pop culture. And you'll hear some about that today. He's a man of great energy and vision, and he brings to all that he does a passion for God, a passion for ministry, and a passion for the church. And so please join me in welcoming Dr. Craig Detweiler.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Gary. I was thrilled by the invitation. I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, so I'm kind of back regionally in the area. Got to see my mom on my way in, so I've been honored to be at Milligan and here at Emmanuel and here in is it the Happy Valley? Is it really the Happy Valley? It feels like a very happy valley, you know? The sun is shining, it's a beautiful day. I've been so impressed by the thoughtfulness of the students here at Emmanuel and the conversations we've been having have been very animated and deep and thoughtful. And so I thought maybe I'd start today with just a test, right? Just a little short quiz, 6 questions, and we'll see how you do. See how you do on IDing these things, all right? So here's number 1. There's number 1. What is it? A wheel. Yes, good. Number 2. Is it me?
No, it's me.
All right.
It's a wheel.
There's the answer. The answer. It's a telephone. It's great. I'm doing a talk about technology, and technology is failing us. It's just perfect, isn't it? Here's number 2. A clock. Yes. Well, are you going to do them? Are you doing it or me? It doesn't matter. Okay, go ahead. We're going to go fast. Number 3, glasses. Hold on. Go back. See, this is going to be a problem. Go back to the glasses. Thank you. All right. This will be maybe one of the worst examples of this talk I've ever given because I have no control over the slides and technology is failing us, but that's all right. Okay, so we had, and zoom back in, not so big. All right. All right, so what do we have? What did we saw? We saw a wheel, a clock, and glasses. These are ancient technologies created to enhance our daily lives. Next. A lute, a mandolin, a guitar. You don't quite plug it in. Maybe you do. I don't know. Next. Paintbrush. When I point, yes. A pen. A guitar, a brush, a pen. Also ancient technologies that give us the ability to do what? Express ourselves, right? Express ourselves. One allows us to see the world. Those first 3 allow us to see the world and connect with the world. These 3 allow us to express what we see in the world. Here it is, the power in our pocket. Anybody have one? Anybody? I think there's 2 over here. I see one back there. I see that hand. I see that. This is the technology that combines all of those things, in a sense, right? It's how we see the world. It's how we organize our world. It's how we transport ourselves beyond our time and space. It's how we express ourselves. Have you ever noticed what's on the iPhone app? The App Store? What's that logo look like? What's it look like? It's an A, but what's in it? There it is. What do we see? Right? Brush, a pen, and a tablet. It's how we write. It's how we express ourselves. It's how we interpret our world. When phones were invented, I don't think people envisioned them having this kind of power. And yet here we are, right, as a family, gathered around our devices, united as four separate universes. Doesn't really matter whether you're iPhone, whether you're, Samsung, something called Nokia, all these ancient technologies, right? We all have this power in our pockets. Do you remember when you got your first cell phone? This was Zach's on a show that many of you do not know. Yes, Saved by the Bell. What is your relationship to technology? Do you think about it? Right? You have this thing in your pocket. What's your relationship to it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you miss it if it's not around? It's happening, of course, at younger and younger ages. It's interesting that the age at which kids get their cell phones is often similar to that age that we think about in terms of adulthood. Right? It's sort of that age of maybe confirmation or when people might make a decision. The right one. All right. And yet this is something that was designed to serve us, and yet we often end up serving it. Kind of responding to its timing, its priorities, its notifications. Can we change that power dynamic? Do we need to change that power dynamic? It says that some 13-year-olds check their social media 100 times a day. That sounds crazy, but somebody back there was like, oh yeah, easily. I'm more like 150, right? What are we missing in this? Now, it's easy as adults to say, man, kids today, right? They've got a problem. They've got a problem. But on average, all people check their phones 150 times a day. You ever get that kind of phantom ring in your pocket? Like, is that my phone? Right? I think it must be, because it usually is. Even when it isn't, we're like, oh, is that it? Nope, that's not it. Oh, is that it? No, that's not it. Every 6.5 minutes. So I've been talking for 6.5 minutes, so some of you are now nervous. Right? You're like, I need to check. It's been too long. That's right, that guy right there. Right? It's too long. It's been over 5. Once it's 5, I start sweating. Now, it's got amazing power and ability to pull us together, right? So in Hong Kong, when they were protesting, right, the Chinese government and takeover, it was phones that kind of allowed that umbrella movement to democratize themselves. And we know how powerful social media was in Egypt, right? How crucial it was to what went on in Cairo. So it has an amazing ability to kind of transcend barriers and bring people together. And yet, there are those times when it takes us out of a moment, when we should be present. You've just been named Miss Universe. There are 1,000 photographers, and you think, I need my own selfie. Just need to get this real quick. Just wait with me. Can you imagine? Right? It just, the problems that would arise if we're not fully present in the moment. Does it make us more connected? I'm not sure, right? My daughter, when she and her friends got their cell phones, they used to talk in the back seat. And now, once they had phones, they no longer talked. They were texting each other, even while sitting beside each other. Is it training a new generation to look down rather than up? And here we are at Milligan, right? Trying to train people to see the world clearly, but to look up, to seek answers, right? At Emmanuel Seminary in God, in Christ, in the Holy Spirit. Did your phone make you smarter? If you were left without a phone, could you get around town? Maybe in Johnson City, it's small enough, right? You can get around town, but maybe not even there. In LA, if I don't have my phone, I am literally lost. I may not get back. How do you feel as educators? It's not a distraction, right? You're not competing with it, are you? As parents, right? Here's parents at dinner. Well, yes, we could read your blog, or you could just tell us about your school day. How's it affecting your relationship with spouses, with loved ones? Your relationship with God. As a pastor, do you feel like you're having to compete? Is it a battle you're losing? There's nothing more precious and rare at this moment in our culture than offering each other our undivided attention. It's sacred. It's so rare. I'm into this subject because I am a parent. I have 2 teenagers. There they are. You can't see their phones, but they're on their body, right? Right there. You know, and when we brought these things into the house, I don't think we realized maybe the full implication of what was coming with it. You know, they've got some social pressure, like if I don't have a phone, I'm not a person, right? If I'm not on Facebook, then do I exist, right? They've got social pressure that they need to be in that game. And yet as a parent, I felt ill-equipped. Where's the textbook that's going to tell me? Where's the owner's manual on that phone? I needed help. I looked for it. I couldn't find it. So I decided I'll do some research and I'll do my own response so that I can help my own kids. And maybe in helping them, I can help some other folks. These are some of the interesting quotes that I found. These quotes are like 40, 50 years old. Daniel Bornstein said, "Technology is so much fun, but we can drown in our technology. The fog of information can drive out knowledge." It's a great challenge at universities, right? Where we're sort of imparting knowledge, and yet people are drowning in too much information. It's tough to want to give them a lecture when they're already like, my head's already full. I'd already downloaded way too much for me to process in one day. Mitchell Kapoor said getting information off the internet is like taking a drink from a fire hydrant. You feel that? You might feel swamped, like you're drowning, a tsunami of ones and O's, bits and bytes. I found this amazing statistic that the average worker is now spending 28% of their work week answering emails. Is that who we are created to be? Is that the great calling that God has given us? Yes, I answer email. I am an information processor. Anybody feel this? Can I get a what? Information overload. Hits you hard, you don't know when. T.S. Eliot, the great Anglican poet, said, "Where's the life we've lost in the living? Where's the wisdom we've lost in knowledge? And where is the knowledge that we have lost in information?" He said, "We're distracted from distraction by distraction, filled with fancies and empty of meaning, timid apathy with no concentration, not here in the darkness, in this twittering world." 1943. Is he a prophet? He's certainly a poet. So, this was my response. I wrote a book, because that's what scholars do. But interestingly, this was a book that people really wanted and really needed. It sold better than any book I've ever written, because I think the felt need is so great. We all feel the tension, and yet we're not quite sure how to respond. The title refers to several different things. It operates on several different levels. On one level, I'm talking about the companies, the iGods that dominate our lives. And it tends to be really these 4 companies. If you think about your daily interaction, this is the circle that you kind of inhabit. It is where we live. And they're all worth, right? How many billions of dollars, even though they're maybe only 10, 15 years old? They've captured our imagination and they've captured our dollars. If you think about how they define us in interesting ways. For Google, what would we say? You are what you seek. Yeah, you are what you search. For Netflix, you are what you watch. For Facebook, you are what you like. For Amazon, you are what you buy. To some degree, they know us better than we know ourselves. The power of the algorithm. If you like this, you will also like this. And then, dang it, they're right. How do we respond, right? With Yahweh, you are whose you are, maybe. Or you are what you worship, right? So that question of iGods and fealty, who demands our attention, who we bow down to, who we look up to, is central to the book. The iGods also refers to these guys, and they are all guys. In fact, they're all white guys. These are the white guys who dominate the world of tech. These are the billionaires. These are the people we look up to. These are the magazine profiles. They make movies about these kinds of people. My wife looked at these gentlemen and she said, you know, it's interesting. Almost every one of them kind of has a problem with interpersonal relationships. I'm not sure they're comfortable around people. And now they've created a world where we can avoid interpersonal relationships and face-to-face communication almost altogether. They're battling for our dollars, they're battling for supremacy. If one gets a phone, the other needs a phone, right? If one does movies, the other needs to do movies, right? If one sells, the other needs to sell. Who will win? I found this on the internet, of course. It's interesting. Here's a battle, right, for world domination. You see Amazonia up there in the northwest, and then you come down, you can see the fortress of Facebook. You can see Appalachia, right, a different version of Appalachia. And they're really trying to decide who gets to run Google Earth. That's really what is at stake here. So what do you think? Is technology an idol? No, right? No. I mean, I camped out 2 months ahead of time, right? To put in my advance order so it would get to me the day that it was available. It only cost $1,000. Omniscient, all-knowing, always available. You call, Siri will answer. Are there dangers of an early attachment? Research is still being done. It's such a new phenomenon, we're not quite sure. What happens to kids when they adopt a phone at too early an age? We don't know. I know we can get a little attached to, I precious, one ring to rule them all. What does it mean to be in community when we're more comfortable texting than talking, when we're maybe hiding behind our screens rather than being face-to-face with each other? You can end up quite lonely on your own digital island. Statistics at Pepperdine, where I teach, the loneliness has gone off the charts over the last decade. People aren't sure why. I have some theories. It's interesting when I walk across campus and I see students, just kind of interacting with their phone rather than their environment. I think about this verse with Jesus where he talks about when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they're harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Students feel busier than ever. And I think they sort of feel harassed by their digital updates and by those prompts. When do they feel free, right? How often do they get to actually put down the phone and to be disconnected, to be in their bodies and to be in this place? One of my students said the only time he feels free is when he's playing volleyball on the beach because he can't hold his phone. Now, it's nice to play volleyball on the beach. I feel pretty free then too, right? But do you take a break? When's your break? Is it in the shower? They haven't made a wet one yet, right? I mean, you could take it in the shower, but you probably don't. When do you get a break from your phone? Of course, if you lose it, right? Just go ballistic, right? Just like, where's my phone? 73% panic, 14% get desperate, 7% get sick, and then 6% are actually relieved. They can't find me. I'm safe. Hear the good news. You are not a gadget. You are not beholden to the iGods agenda. Where's God in relationship to all this? How are we hearing God in the middle of all this, right? I'm trained as a theologian. So what does God think about technology? And do we have a theology of technology? I've talked about the problems. Well, now how do we respond theologically as people of faith? I decided to do some scriptural searching, right? A history of technology in the Bible. And these are some of the things that I discovered, or questions that I have. Is God the original technologist? Talk about God as the creator, God as the potter. Is God the technologist? Is God the great engineer? Is God the great programmer? Did he put the code into us? Maybe a new generation needs new images of God to think about the power and the majesty and the omniscience of God. When you look at Michelangelo's version here in the Sistine Chapel, anybody been there? Yeah, amazing, right? You look up and right in the middle, here's God. And what's the first thing God's doing? God is separating what? Light from darkness. You go on this side, you go on this side. Light this side, darkness that side. Same thing happens with what? Land and sea. Separating these things. That's actually what coding is. That's how Google search works. Not this, but that. Not this, but that. You're looking for this, not that one. That's what a 1 and an O are about. This is a 1, that's an O. This is a 1, that's an O. That's how it's sorted. And to some degree, that's how God started the universe, right? This is light, this is darkness, this is land, this is sea. Isn't that the original code, right? Hasn't God been dividing things in a sense? Giving shape to void, right? Bringing order to chaos. Isn't that what an engineer does? They take a problem, right, like a river, and say, can we bring this under control? Can we harness this for good? Can we make something beautiful out of it? Maybe the Tennessee Valley Authority, I don't know. You tell me about your history. So, in a sense, we've been acting on behalf of God, right? Taking the gifts that we've been given, like wind, and saying, what can we do with this incredible force? How do we turn this force into something that doesn't destroy us, but can serve us? Isn't that what we do, right, with power, with this green movement? Environmentalism, this kind of environmentalism is a very godly kind of act. What happens? What's the problem? What happens in the garden? Even when they were cast out, what's it say? God made garments of skin for Adam and his wife and clothed them. Isn't clothing a technology? Something that's woven, it's something that's, right, that's made. So technology, I think, has always been, even back to the garden, a comfort and a consolation in a tough world. There's floods, you might need to put up a dam. Right? There's sun, you might need to put up something, a roof over your head. If you live in Michigan, you're going to need to cover up. If you live in California, you're also going to need to cover up. And these are beautiful things that humans have made. Even if you go back and look at this stained glass, right? You see the consolation that God gave Adam and Eve. It's going to be hard outside the garden, so what's he give Adam? Right? A tool to work the ground. Isn't that what technology is? A tool to make our lives easier. What's Eve get? The loom. She becomes that first weaver who imitates what God has done for them. And so we've been recovering technology as a gift and a tool designed to serve us. If you live in California, man, we know that there's beautiful things to be made and eaten. We're so productive in how we take care of the land and what we do. All right, now, what does God think about technology today? I don't know. What's the Pope? Pope takes selfies. What's Jesus think? We've talked about God. What does Jesus think? This seems like a ridiculous question. What would Jesus tweet? And yet, so much of what he said is capturable as like 140 characters, right? Maybe that's a reason it was written down. Maybe that's the reason it was passed on. Maybe people are like, that's a good quote, right? I don't know if they pulled out, a little cuneiform tablet and they just were like, man, I got to get that down, right? But there was a pithiness to Jesus that suggests that maybe short isn't necessarily bad. Now, what would he say in church? I don't know. While he's teaching or preaching, he might have been a little disturbed by someone who was not paying attention and called them out in a certain kind of way. Was he Apple or PC? I know the answer, right? I mean, I don't have problems, right, when I present. Is that a PC back there? I thought so. Just gonna say. What did Jesus' dad do? Carpenter, a certain kind of craftsman, right? So Jesus grew up around crafts, that type of thing. We might even say that Jesus might have been trained as a handyman, someone who could fix things, someone who could design things, someone who could build things. What's the Greek word? This is a seminary, right? What's the Greek word for carpenter? You done the word study? Smartest man in the room. You should be president. Tecton.
Handyman, stonemason, carpenter, fixer-upper.
Tecton. That's a Greek word. Where's the word technology come from? Another Greek word, techne. It's kind of the same root. It's the same root. Do we think of Jesus as a tecton? Maybe if we preached about Jesus as a tecton, people wouldn't see him as someone rooted in the past, but someone incredibly present. In fact, I bet Jesus would love, right, our tech folks. He might have been a techie himself, and we take that for granted. And yet, in the life of the church, how much do we depend upon technology? So we talked about God, we talked about Jesus. I believe the Spirit has led the church to always be on the forefront of technology. Think about that cathedral in its day. What was that? That was an engineering marvel rooted in new technology. We've discovered this thing. It's called an arch. And you put a few pieces in it and it holds itself up. And we're going to put one on top of the other. And what else are we going to put inside of it to make it last? How long has this thing lasted? Right? It was like a 300-year project for the community. And it stands as a testimony, employing technology to the glory of God. This was a new technology that they said, you know what? I think we can communicate eternal truth through this new cutting-edge invention called stained glass. Church organ. I know Church of Christ tradition. Okay, we'll just leave that aside for a minute. But there's a few churches that have organs. I'm talking about Pepperdine, not here. Right? This was cutting edge technology. People would come from miles around just to hear the majesty, the power that reflected the glory of God in those church organs. Church bells was an invention, right? Clocks were invented and perfected by monks. Why? They wanted to figure out how to order their day, when to work and when to pray. What are the bells for? To tell you and remind you now is the time to worship. What could these prompts be for? They could tell you now is the time to put me down and to take a break and to pray to God. right? Praying the hours is rooted in clocks and technology and bells. And here we are today. There's a few churches that have employed technology, maybe too much technology, right? It's like a sight and sound spectacular, right? A bigger light show every week. But it's interesting that a lot of these churches are growing, perhaps because they're not afraid of technology. And so for young people, they're able to say, these people are comfortable with my world. They're not fearful of my world. They're living in the 21st century. So is technology a blessing or a curse? What do you think? Is it a hope to embrace or a temptation to avoid? What do you think? Right? Depends. It's a lot like money. Right? It can be used for a lot of different things. It can be used to glorify God, it can be used to glorify the self. Is it given by God? I don't know. I think a lot of people worship at the Church of Apple. They're interested in the book of Job's. Job or Job? It is a tablet brought down from Mount Cupertino. And here's a place people gather to get answers, to get wisdom, to figure out how to make their life better. There's geniuses awaiting to serve you at the Apple Bar. This is a cathedral of the 21st century. But do we want to be like Steve Jobs? Is he someone to admire? Not very generous. Very rich, not very generous. Not generous to his employees in how he treated them. Not someone necessarily to admire in how he comported his daily life, how he related to his own son. And interestingly, we think, well, Steve Jobs, right, must have been so into it. This is a reporter who went to his house. And he said in the second paragraph, you'll see, so your kids must love the iPad. They haven't used it, he told me. We limit how much technology our kids use at home. I'm sure I responded with a dumbfounded silence. I'd imagine the Job's household was like a nerd's paradise. The walls were giant touch screens. Dining table was made from tiles of iPads, and the iPads were handed out to guests like chocolates on a pillow. Nope, Mr. Jobs told me, not even close. So here he is telling you, you need this, and you need it now. And yet in his own private life, he's like, no, I don't want my kids touching that. That's a false idol, a false God. So what does God think about technology? I went and finished the primeval prologue in Genesis. I just said, well, if these are elemental stories about the truth of who we are as people, how does it end? What's the next story? Ah, yes, right? How is this story a technological story? Genesis 6 through 9. If you've seen the film, don't. But God gives very specific instructions. It's kind of a building project book. It's a technological book. And God gives very detailed things about how you're going to preserve life on this planet. How are you going to preserve environmental biodiversity? You need an ark. And so the Genesis story of Noah could be read as technology as a life-saving gift. What's the next story? Babel. Doesn't feature Noah, features a different person portrayed in there. Who's the kind of the hero of that story? Nimrod. Anybody name their kids Nimrod? Not really an admirable person, not someone we really look up to and celebrate, not a biblical hero. So what's Nimrod's goal? What's the plan? Going to build themselves what? A tower. What's the goal in the tower? Elevate themselves, right? They're going to build a platform to the sky. And we know this actually happened, right? If you go to Iran, Iraq, right? Egypt, there's all kinds of monuments, ancient monuments to rulers and kingdoms and communities. What do they say? Let us build ourselves a city, a tower to reach the heavens, so we may make a name for ourselves and not be scattered over the face of the whole earth. How'd it go? Kind of a failed project, right? They used the best of technology, but it didn't really do what they wanted to do. Technology can be a self-serving folly. The other side of the story. What do we call social media apps? What do they call those? They call them platforms. That's odd. Platforms. What's the goal of social media? Elevate ourselves. What's your status? Is technology a life-saving ark or a presumptuous folly? What do you think? Yes. Yes, 1,000 times, yes. So now how do we respond? What do we do? I think this is a key question in your social media use, right? Who or what is being elevated in your social media use? Just think about that question before you post. Who or what is being elevated in this moment? Why am I posting this? Who am I pointing to? Who's being lifted up and why? The iGods will ask you to elevate your status. And maybe they are idols. But C.S. Lewis said, humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. That's good wisdom for the social media age. You might say, hey, my brain hurts. I appreciate this, Craig, but it's like Thursday. I'm just waiting for the weekend. Thanks, but no thanks. What are the implications for you and your context? I don't know, right? I don't know about your own use, your own family, your hallmates, your life. I don't know how addicted you may or may not be. But I think that this concept of digital discipleship is something we're barely beginning to think about. We have a generation who are living out their lives on social media, and yet they're not quite sure how to love one another in a digital space. As we see this notion of hate of the other, right? How we demonize each other online. Boy, do we need a digital discipleship that provides a different alternative. I hope you'll be part of figuring that out. Young people, much younger than me, the digital natives. I'm just a visitor. This is the new test of discipleship. Do you love one another more than this? Are you willing to put it down for the meal, for the worship service? Can you disconnect? Can you power down in order to power up? Thank you.